Hello, fictional. Welcome to the What If Essay. Today we are gonna see, what if Sona was Issei fiance? Part 1. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. It was a sunny day with a nice breeze, making it the perfect day to be called a summer day. The only downfall to the day would be that it is a school day. Granted, it's still early enough for students to be milling about on school property, waiting for the day to properly begin. Most were just lounging about, either in the shade of the trees found on the campus or inside sitting at their desk. A few others were outside at a table watching as chess games were played. Oh, Issei. Where have you been? We were starting to think something had happened to you, a teenage boy called out while waving at a brown-haired boy that had just walked through the school gates. Unknown to anyone, one of the two currently playing chess, Sona the student council vice president aka the one that was winning and had won all of the games before as well, glanced up after feeling a powerful presence wash over her. Though if someone had noticed her she could just say she was curious, since the one that called out had a slight edge of worry in his tone. The one that had called out had a shaven head, though it must have been done a few days ago, because you could see the hair starting to grow back. Standing next to him was a dark-haired boy with glasses. The two were glancing at the brown-haired boy now identified as Issei, as if looking for injuries. Guys, I'm fine. I just missed the bus, plus as you already know my bike was stolen last week, so I had to run today. Issei responded to them, smiling even though anyone paying enough attention would see they looked a little more worried and slightly angry after hearing his explanation. Sona, still watching, was interested now. The two were very open perverts, yet protective over Issei. What was really interesting to her, however, was the power she felt from him was both cold and warm to her devilish senses. You could have called us, you know. I mean, our bikes have 2 seats for a reason. After all, your house is like 10 miles away. But running that far after what happened a few days ago, the shaven-headed one commented, getting a nod of agreement from the glasses-wearing boy. A small run won't kill me, I mean I walked most of the way. Besides, we agreed we'd leave that behind us when we got accepted here, remember? As he spoke, Issei gave the two a slight glare, making them nod. Waiting a few seconds, he asked about what was going on. The dark-haired boy wearing glasses explained that the vice president of the student council was playing chess against anyone that wanted to try their luck. He also mentioned that she had beaten everyone. She's so good, she might even beat you and you're a whiz at the game. The shaven one chimed in, motioning towards the chessboard, which was now reset as Sona had won the game even without paying full attention. Sona, however, frowned, wondering if he was only slightly better than average, but liked to brag to his friends. Not even giving it a second thought, Issei walked over. Mind a match? If that lazy behind says you're good, then you've got to be really good, Issei asked, waiting for her response before even making a move to sit down. Very well, you're the only first-year male I haven't gotten a chance to play yet. Which side do you want? Ladies first, so you pick the sides, Issei said as he smiled while sitting down. Sona's lips twitched at his words, as she thought at least he has manners. Sona set up the board, then spun it so that Issei would be playing the white pieces. Forcing me to have the first move by giving me white. That's a good way to test the waters and be able to react to any strategy I make, Issei stated in amusement. Sona smirked, happy he didn't seem to have any ill will towards her for doing this, unlike the last person who noticed. Issei smiled back at her as he made his move. 5 minutes into the game, Sona started to notice how easily he was countering her strategies, all while seeming like he was just making random moves. Oh, check it out, Issei, they're doing a remake of the series. The glasses-wearing boy interrupted the match as he handed Issei a magazine. The two started to chat about whatever series it was, with Issei not even paying attention to the game, yet still brilliantly battling against Sona. Studying the board, Sona winced when she had to sacrifice her queen, wondering just how talented Issei was at chess, to be besting her without looking, as he continued to chat with his friend. A few turns later, Issei had promoted most of his pawns to rooks. Sona put up a struggle after that, but in the end she lost. Giving up already? A random boy taunted Issei when he stood up. No, he won, he's got me in checkmate, there's no way I can move my king, and it can't sit still without being taken either. At this point, everyone that knew how good Sona was stared at the board in shock. Issei, however, just offered her his hand. Great game. That was the best match I've had in a while though, so let me know if you want a rematch, I'll play anytime. After that, the crowd that was watching dissipated and Issei walked off with his friends, leaving Sona and her peerage. All of whom were flabbergasted as he had beaten her in chess. The one thing preventing her parents from marrying her off as part of an arranged marriage. Yet Issei didn't even know it. He didn't know that by beating her, according to the agreement she had with her parents, Issei had now become her fiance. Finally, the silence was broken by the cackling from Sona's queen and friend Tsubaki. The grin she had made the blushing bride-to-be rush to stop her, but it was too late. I call dibs on telling Leviathan about her new soon-to-be brother-in-law. Time skip. Sona. To what do I owe the visit? Ria's Gremory, the girl most lusted after in the school, asked her rival and friend as Sona entered the old school building during her free time to speak to her. Well, we agreed to always tell each other when we found a prospective peerage member to avoid fighting over them. I don't want any misunderstandings, so I figured it'd be best to inform you. Sona said pointedly as Ria's just shrugged at her. After all, it wasn't common knowledge, but back when Ria's rook Kaneko was supposed to be executed, it was Sona's older sister Serafal who rescued the poor girl and not Ria's older brother Serzich's. The only reason Kaneko was part of Ria's peerage instead was that Lord Gremory, Ria's father, bribed the council into letting Ria's revive her first. Both Serzich's and Serafal, the current Lucifer and Leviathan respectively, were pissed off. They had to help hide the scandal so as to avoid fighting between households in the devil community. They didn't want the girls to hurt each other, but the damage had already been done. Sona never fully trusts Ria's on anything anymore, not mentioning to her that Serafal had given her 2 mutated rook pieces as an apology. Oh good. I've also found potential peerage members. 2 of them actually. First year Issei HIATUS is my claimed prospect. Sona spoke immediately, getting a scoff from Ria's. He's powerless. You can have him, though I'm going for his 2 friends, the perverts. I sense strong ice magic in one and fire in the other, though it's hard to tell which is which since they spend so much time together. But they should be useful to my situation. Sona's queen Tsubaki was with her and using telepathy, spoke to her king. They think the strong magic is coming from his friends. Ice and fire don't mix well, and it's unheard of for one person to have both. That amount of power in one human would be enough to kill him. Sona sent back stuttering at the end as she realized that could possibly be why Issei's friends are so protective of him. Very well Ria's, I'll mark the 2 off as yours. When do you plan to tell them? Sona questioned as she marked something on her ever-present clipboard, masking the fact she was communicating with her queen. It was a special trick Serafal had taught Sona and her peerage for use in emergencies. When they die, Ria's responded to the question, casually looking out the window and down at the boys outside the kendo club's changing rooms. Sona also looked and smiled when she saw Issei napping on the ground behind his friends. I'll be telling Issei next month after I judge his character a bit. Sona mentioned to her rival, with a disapproving tone at her friend's reply. Aside from his powerful friends, what about him caught your eye? Moving to leave, Sona responded that Issei had beaten her at chess before leaving a shocked and spluttering Ria's, since she knew what that meant. Momo and Ria are in his class. They'll keep an eye on him and learn his plans for the future, Sona said to her queen. Tsubaki nodded just as angry yells were heard, followed by pain-filled male screams. The perverts were caught by the kendo club. But before Sona and Tsubaki could make their way over, the kendo girls noticed Issei, shouting about how there was another one. The 2 perverts jumped in front of their friend and shouted the word no. They mentioned that he had been sleeping the entire time. Matsu? Moto? What's with all the yelling? Issei groggily asked as he sat up and rubbed his eyes. Quite a few members of the kendo club started blushing at how cute he looked, with a couple of them even squealing. Sona also blushed a bit at how cute he looked. Don't tell me you 2 were peeping on girls again. I told you that you'd get caught and hurt, Issei spoke before yawning after he saw how roughed up his friends looked. His friends went to apologize, but before they could finish, a coughing fit overtook Issei, startling everyone when he moved his hand and they saw blood on his chin. I'm alright, it just hit me suddenly, that's all. Issei said, waving his friends off as he wiped the blood away. Why? One of the kendo girls asked as Sona and Tsubaki approached silently. I have a new illness. It's not contagious and it's incurable. Doctors say I'll probably die before I graduate. I tried to leave it behind me, but I couldn't apparently, Issei explained before sighing. Sona felt her heart stop as her supposed and unknowing fiance was dying. But learning that told her that her earlier guess about his powers killing him was correct. So you weren't peeking with your friends because one of the first-year kendo girls asked, feeling rather sad. No offense ladies, I mean you are all gorgeous, but I refuse to get attached to someone or try and date anyone only to hurt them when I die. I'd never want to hurt someone like that. Besides, I was napping because I had a really bad attack a few days ago that put me in the hospital. I'm still somewhat weak from then. At this point, Sona and Tsubaki announced their presence as Sona spoke softly. Her words had the kendo club agreeing, though the pervert duo was crying because all the girls were now off limits thanks to the bro code. To think that you are still able to smile even while suffering from such a cruel fate. You are one of the strongest people I've met. If anyone gives you problems, come straight to me and I'll sort them out. A full month had passed since the day Issei beat Sona at chess. But that has nothing to do with right now. Right now Issei has walked into the student council office. Shitori, you called for me? Issei asked, only to get a glare for using her last name. Issei, I told you a while ago we're friends, so. That means we're on a first name basis, so please call me Sona. Sorry, it's just a habit. Anyway, why did you ask for me, Sona? Issei asked again, earning a smile since he used her first name. You see, they became rather close because anytime Issei wasn't hanging out with his perverted friends Mitsuda and Motohama, he was with Sona and Tsubaki. Although he had also been spending a bit of time with Momo and Ryaa since they were classmates and part of the student council. Issei also spent a bit of time with Katase and Murayama, two first-year girls from the kendo club that had become protective of him as well. It didn't take long for the school to find out the kendo club and student council were protecting him, though no one could find out why since Issei didn't want people to know about the secret that is his illness. Issei, what if I told you devils were real? Sona asked him as a response to his question of why she called for him. Wait, you know about them too? How do you already know about devils? Sona's question about devils and Issei's answer surprised each other and everyone else in the room. Thankfully Sona could push the surprise away, and once she did she was curious as to how he already knew about devils. Well, when I was little, a lady from the church discovered that I had magic power. She told me about how people that knew about magic might come after me. Aunt Griselda, as I called her, taught me a lot, including telling me about angels, fallen angels, and devils. She tried to help me control my powers. Thanks to her teaching I can do this. Issei paused in his explanation and created a crystallized rose made out of ice in one hand, and a bright red metallic gauntlet with a shining green gem appeared on the other hand. The gauntlet also had a rather draconic appearance. I see, I should inform you that everyone in this Sona started to say before getting cut off. I know that you are all devils. I can sense it, just like I can tell that Ria's occult research club is full of devils. Issei, I only know of a few exorcists, angels, and mostly devils that can sense others like that. Tell me, what do you sense from me? Sona responded as her eyes narrowed in thought. His strong fire magic makes sense now, considering he's got a sacred gear that is dragon in origin. But his ice magic, could he have devil heritage? As far as I know, only devils have the ability to sense another devil's magic. From you, Sona, I sense water mostly. I mean, there's a hint of ice, but mostly water. You've also got a commanding presence, Issei responded, no hesitation in his answer, making Sona nod slightly as he confirmed her suspicion. What do you know of your family, Issei? I mean, I've only heard of devils being able to sense another devil's magic before. Sona now had a concerned look on her face, though it was also a serious look. If he had devil heritage, that meant he was likely a bastard child. Given his high magic power, mostly likely he was the son of a high-class devil, and there were only two devil families Sona knew about that had ice magic. I don't have a clue since I'm adopted. If I remember right, my parents saw some strange-looking guy. I'm an idiot. They saw a devil leaving me in an alleyway when they were on their way home from the movies. Issei facepalmed at the realization, wondering how he hadn't figured it out before. Steeling herself for his answer to her next question, Sona asked Issei if he could also control water. If he said no, that meant a member of the Lucifuge family that was basically extinct was his parent. If he said yes, then one of her parents had him in secret and they were half-siblings. If I focus really hard I can, but it always causes an attack, so I'd say I can't control water. Ice is so easy to use, it's almost as easy as breathing. Issei shook his head, making Sona smile, and let out a small sigh of relief. That meant they weren't half-siblings. She also knew he wasn't her sister Seraphal's child, since she would have found out about the pregnancy at the same time as Seraphal. That left her other suspicion, the Lucifuge family, though she only knew of one living member of that family. Moving on to the real reason I called for you. Issei, I'm going to be honest with you. I want your permission to revive you as a devil. Issei gave her a small smile. One that looked far too familiar. Her eyes widened ever so slightly as she recalled a similar face every time she would spend time with Rias, or when she would visit the Gremory household and see little Milikas with both of his parents when they were off duty. Sorry Sona, but I don't think that's a good idea. Sona heard the refusal, but hardly acknowledged it as her eyes were fixated on his smile. There was only one thing going through her mind at the time. He has Graphia's smile. After a few moments she recovered enough to realize he had said no and asked why. Issei told her he didn't want to risk being revived with his illness since at times when he's suffering from an attack it's very painful and he didn't want to live hundreds of years suffering like that. Acknowledging his response, she told him her offer would always be there and let him continue on with his day. Time skip, last one for a while. It had been a year since Sona had made her offer and Issei grew even closer with her and the devils on the student council. You know my offer still stands, Issei. I don't want to seem like I'm pressuring you, but you're getting worse faster and I hate seeing you like this. Sona spoke as she helped wipe some blood off his chin from an attack he had while the two were playing chess in the student council's office. I know Sona, but my answer is still no. I'm not sure if my illness will still affect me and it's rather painful at times living for a long time while suffering doesn't sound good to me. Issei smiled weakly at her, realizing that she had become his best friend. Over the past year they had spent so much time together you'd think they were joined at the hip. I understand that Issei, but please if something other than your illness kills you, please let me reincarnate you. I don't want anything to happen to you. So please promise me that way I can be prepared. Sona gently asked, staring at him with her violet-colored eyes. Issei conceded that much to her. Promising that if he died by anything besides his illness that she could revive him. It helps that she told him becoming a devil would give him a body better suited to his powers and that might help him heal. The idea was that his new devil body would help regulate his powers, with his connection to her water magic, would help tone down his fire magic from the sacred gear and bolster his ice magic. This would end the fight between the powers on which one was the dominant power, thus stopping his power from tearing his body apart. Thank you Issei. You're very important to me. I don't want to imagine a world without you. One where you've been taken away from me by something you didn't plan. Your sickness I can understand. Anything else I refuse to believe. Sona spoke, smiling at Issei and relieving him, though her words made him blush a little. He had startled himself as he realized that he was crushing on Sona and had been since the 6th month of the last school year. But if he chose to believe the comments he heard from Tsubaki, Momo and Ria, then it was likely that Sona returned his feelings. Which was true, Sona just didn't know how to tell him. After all she didn't was to pressure him into doing things for her. Pressuring people into things was Ria's job. Speaking of the red-headed devil, Ria's and her peerage seemed to have something against Issei. They were spreading horrible rumors around the school. Unfortunately the only people that didn't believe the rumors were the kendo club and the student council. Sona had actually punched a boy that made Issei cough up blood after being hit for forcing Sona to spend time with him. Tsubaki quickly covered up her enhanced strength by mentioning Sona's overprotective older sister had insisted that she learn martial arts before attending public school. Not that it was a lie, considering Serafo made sure Sona knew at least 3 different ways to defend herself with just her hands and feet before she was 1. Well, 1 in human years, which would be 10 in devil years. I'm just sorry that thanks to this illness I keep hurting people, especially you. I mean yesterday I made a fallen angel that had disguised herself as a human cry by turning her down. Issei told Sona as he laid his head on her shoulder when she sat down next to him. Is it wrong that I'm glad you told her no just like you told the human girls no? Sona questioned as she tensed a bit when he said the words fallen angel. But she relaxed as her still unknowing fiance leaned into her side. Issei wasn't aware of the fact that he was like a giant heat ice pack as he leaned into her, soothing her aches and pains. You know I don't treat people differently just because of what they are. I mean take away powers, longer lives and wings. What are they then? Human. We all still bleed the same color. Issei responded before yawning. Sona shifted so that he was resting his head in her lap, telling him to take a quick nap and that she'd wake him up in time to go to his next class. After a moment she started running her fingers through his hair. Issei thanked her, blushing slightly at the sensation of her hands in his hair before nuzzling his face into her stomach. Hands he curled up around her on the couch. Sona blushed when he wound his arms around her, holding her in place. Sona then noticed her sister's knight Piko Pekoyama, who was her self-proclaimed guardian, checking in on her from the shadows. Something she had always done even when she was at school. Sona waited until Issei's breathing evened out as proof that he had fallen asleep. Hi Piko. Nice to see you again. Though this is the 4th time this week you've come to check on me and it's only Tuesday. Sona said, with a smile as a woman with white hair and red eyes that hid behind glasses stepped out of the shadows. She was wearing all black and had a shinai hanging from her belt. Probably because she couldn't bring an actual weapon in public. Since checking on you last year, I've always noticed a strong ice magic and strong fire-based sacred gear. Even with how often you were around the source I was unable to pinpoint it. I'm just concerned that they might harm you, Piko stated, smiling slightly at Sona. From the moment she saw the girl as a newborn babe, she had declared herself as Sona's protector. Her master and King Serafo openly encouraged the strongest knight in the underworld's desire to protect Sona from any threat. Of course, growing up around her sister's peerage, all of whom were protective of her, helped make potential enemies weary. Issei wouldn't hurt me. We've remained friends even after he rejected my offer to reincarnate him last year. In fact I'd say he and Tsubaki are tied as my best friend. The others will agree with me, after all we're all fairly protective of him. Sona responded, smiling down at Issei as her fingers carted through his hair without a thought. I've noticed. But he feels similar to Grafia. Piko said, staring at the boy. He is a partial devil, at least he looks similar to Grafia at times. He has her smile, which I remember from when Riaz and I were children. When he's working on his artwork, he's got such a neutral face on and it is almost exactly like hers. Heck, his face has a similar shape to hers. On top of that he has her habit of trying to keep everyone at a distance, though that might be due to his illness. Sona sighed as she finally gave up on trying to find a subtle way to learn about Issei's possible parentage. Pico, can you do me a favor real quick? Can you go and ask Grafia to come here for an important matter? If she asks, just mention I found a student with strong ice magic that tearing his body apart, Sona asked, looking at the swordswoman who just nodded. Of course. If she presses for more, like why he's so important to you or why she in particular is needed, what should I say? Unlike Seraphol and I, he has little to no water magic. All ice. While Seraphol has ice magic, hers is an advanced form of water magic, while Grafia's element is naturally ice. Sona explained, which made Pico nod since it made sense. As to why he's so important to you? Pico asked as she stepped into the shadows to hit her magic circle as she prepared to teleport away. She was halfway through teleporting already when Sona's answer came. He beat me at chess. Pico stumbled in shock, which caused to fall on her ass when she arrived at the Gremory mansion where she had teleported to. Whoa Pico, outside of fighting I've never seen you teleport that roughly. Wait, you weren't fight were you? Seraphol asked, looking amused as she glanced over her knight while messing with Surziches, the two playing around, while Grafia tried to prevent them from destroying his office. No, I just received some shocking news from your sister as I was teleporting out. Oh, how is she? Is Sona alright? Seraphol quickly latched onto her knight, clinging to the mention of her little sister. Siscon Surziches taunted his friend, causing her to stick her tongue out at him. That's funny coming from the Siscon king. At least Sona doesn't mind it so long as strangers aren't around. Seraphol teased back, which made Surziches pout. It was actually kind of funny. It was an ongoing thing between the two of them to spoil their little sisters rotten and adore them. But Seraphol was right, as Riaz had started to detest her brother's Siscon nature, not just in public, but even when it was just the two of them. Anyway, Sona is fine, though she sent me to ask for your assistance, Pico stated before turning to Grafia. Last time. Anyway, Sona is fine, though she sent me to ask for your assistance, Pico stated before turning to Grafia. This time? Might I ask why? Is everything okay? Grafia asked as her eyes narrowed in thought. I would never leave Sona in a dangerous situation, Pico started to answer before continuing. She is requesting for your assistance because she has found a student at the school, a young man a year behind her. He has powerful ice magic, but it's constantly at war with his fire-type sacred gear that, based on the power I feel from it, is draconic in origin. The two powers are ripping his body apart, at times it's bad enough that he coughs up blood. From what I've overheard, he's predicted to die within the year if something isn't done. Seraphol, Surziches, and Grafia all nodded at the explanation. It made sense, though it seemed like a sad situation. Though they had to wonder how the boy had come to have two opposing elements, as it's unheard of for someone to have affinities that conflict. But why didn't Sona ask for me then? I have ice magic too. I had asked that as well. From her explanation, he has very powerful and natural ice magic and little if any water magic. Since your ice magic came from training your water magic, she felt it would be better to ask Grafia, as there's more of a similarity between their powers than yours. I can understand that reasoning. Though now I wonder why this boy is so important to Sona. Grafia responded as they all realized it would make more sense for Grafia to help the boy than Seraphol now. Pico glanced at her king, knowing that she probably wasn't going to take the news very well. Deciding to give a bit of context just in case, she explained. Despite turning down her offer of being reincarnated as a devil unless he died of something other than his illness, they are very friendly and close with each other. There was an incident where Sona had punched a fellow student for hitting the boy in the stomach and making him cough up some blood. She broke the fellow's jaw in two places with that punch. Seraphol grinned at that before loudly and proudly declaring that was her baby sister, though she caught on and was slightly worried at the fact Pico was hesitating. It also seems that the boy has won against her while playing chess, Pico stated, wincing at the silence in the room before an explosion of power radiated out from her king. What? Seraphol screamed, her eyes wide. The scream drew the rest of Sona's peerage and Surzich's peerage as well. Everyone on full alert. Seraphol, what's wrong? Seraphol's queen, Mukuro Ikisaba, questioned, hands twitching towards the knives hung on her belt. Her question echoed by Ibuki Miota, Seraphol's bishop and one of the less extreme members of her peerage. Sona threw her arms out around Ibuki, crying. It's terrible, Ibu. Sona got engaged. Sona's words caused most of her peerage to freeze in shock for a moment before one of her pawns, a giant of a man named Behemoth, calmly asked one word. What? The boy with strong ice magic and a fire-type sacred gear beat Sona at chess. Seraphol wailed. Well then it seems we're taking a trip to the school to visit Sona, Mukuro said, her hands clenched around the handles of her knives. Pico chimed in at that. Seraphol, please remember that Sona doesn't want the boy to die. She is actively trying to prevent him dying, not of him killed by her older sister and her peerage. But it's no easy feat to claim victory in chess against any member of the Citri family. Especially not for a boy as sickly as you noted him to be. I think I'll go with you, it seems like it'll be interesting. After all, Grafia is going to help teach him his ice magic, right, sweetie? Sirziches stated as he wrapped an arm around his wife's waist, only to have her step out of his arms for a moment as she flicked his forehead. I've told you about calling me that when I'm on duty, Grafia scolded him as she pulled on his cheek. Sirziches repeatedly said ow and nodded at her words before she finally let go. So then, shall we go meet Sona's betrothed? As Grafia finished speaking her question, a magic circle appeared under the group. They teleported into the Occult Research Club's club room, which due to classes still going on was currently empty. Both Sona and the boy have a free period right now. When I left they were in the student council room. Please follow me, Pico stated as she led the group towards the student council's office. After a few minutes they arrived only to see Sona's peerage standing around the door looking in. A couple of them were squealing at whatever sight they were seeing. Sona's queen Tsubaki, however, was smiling as she took pictures, quietly snickering. What's going on? Sirziches asked, which made the girls jump, though they recovered quickly enough not to disrupt whatever they were watching. Oh, sorry to be blocking the way, Lucifer sir. It's just too cute. Momo answered, blushing at the fact they all had been caught. What is? Sirziches asked, still confused as to what was going on inside the room. The girls moved aside so the adults could look into the room. Sona had fallen asleep sometime after Pico left. Issei was laying somewhat on top of her, with his head pillowed on her stomach, one arm still wrapped around the girl. Sona was draped across the couch, her head laying on one of the couch's arms with one hand barely holding onto a pen hanging over the side. The other hand still in his hair, almost as if the two were holding each other closer. The adults could clearly tell that Sona had tried to get some work done, but with the large icy hot magic they were feeling coming off of Issei, they knew how nice it must have felt to the girl, who was likely stressed out with her duty as the student council president. Pico had to hold Serafal back from attacking the boy or glumping the two. It was hard to tell since she was being so quiet. But Ibuki, being the clever girl and calm one of the group, clasped her hand around her king's mouth the second it opened, effectively muffling the squeal that Serafal was attempting to make. Sirziches and Grafia, however, were just staring at the boy's face. He looked so similar to Grafia, though he also somewhat resembled Sirziches, just with a darker shade to his hair. The same shade as Sirziches' mother. Actually, they couldn't see his eyes since he was sleeping, but the power they felt from him also contributed to their shock. To them it felt very familiar. Takumi, Grafia mumbled, her voice shaking, as tears started to form in her eyes. Grafia? Tsubaki asked worriedly once she looked at the older woman and noticed how she seemed to be struggling to stand. Noticing just how shocked yet happy she looked, Sirziches swept her into a hug. That boy, we named him Takumi, Grafia stated, getting confused looks from Sona's peerage, whereas Serafal and her peerage were shocked for a moment. Takumi, isn't that the name you gave? Serafal started to ask as she put the pieces together but was cut off, as Sirziches confirmed that Issei was Milika's older brother. While he was speaking, Grafia stumbled into the room. Once she got close enough, Sona's eyes flashed demonically as she was awoke, but she relaxed once she saw Grafia. Though she had jumped as Sirziches finished speaking, the jolt waking Issei, who was brought into a tearful hug by Grafia as Sirziches finished speaking. He's our oldest son. Sona and her peerage were shocked as the revelation hit. Sona, what's happening? Do you know these people? Issei questioned, looking towards his friend as he tried to get out of the hug he was wrapped in. Only his response was her shocked face, however she quickly recovered. Issei, these are some other devils. Shortly after you fell asleep I sent my sister's knight Pico, who was watching over us, to find and ask Grafia here to help train your ice magic so we could hopefully buy you a bit more time. Sona explained as she fixed her glasses and regained her composure, thought in her head she was making note of the fact she was right that Issei was related to Grafia. But it turns out that these two are your birth parents. Tsubaki stepped in and finished for her king. Issei blinked rapidly at that for a moment or two before looking up at the silver-haired woman that was clinging to him while the red-headed man stepped into the room. Wait, if I was abandoned then why do they look so happy to see me? I mean, my adoptive parents found me after noticing a devil leaving me alone in an alleyway. Issei asked, confused. Grafia choked out a sob. Sirzich's eyes widened at the statement, while Serafal and her peerage grimaced as they remembered the incident. No. We never abandoned you. When you were a baby you were kidnapped right out of your crib. There was a stray devil that wanted revenge on us. You were only a couple months old when it happened. I promise you that we searched, Sirziches told him as he stepped closer once more, and everyone could clearly see how heartbroken he was recalling the incident. It's true. I helped with the search, heck, we have never stopped looking. Oh. By the way, I'm Serafal, Sona's older sister. Serafal stepped in and introduced herself to Issei, somehow feeling happy that Sona's husband-to-be was someone that they had a slight connection to already. So you're the beloved older sister that Sona keeps telling me. Issei started only to be cut off by Sona's hand covering his mouth as she told him to shut up since Serafal would never let her hear the end of it. She talks about me? I knew you loved me, Sona. Serafal cheered as she tackled Sona into a hug. Issei laughed at his friend as she struggled to get away from her older sister, but he startled her into worrying when his laughter turned into a coughing fit. The alarmed student council members stepped forward prepared to help their friend as Sona quickly pried her sister off and rushed to his side. It's fine. I'm alright, that was just a small attack, Issei told them weakly as he removed his hands from in front of his mouth. The blood that was on his chin startled the older devils, even though they had already been told that he was dying. Hearing about something and seeing it in person are two different things after all. Issei, any attack is cause to worry, Sona reminded the boy as she used a tissue to wipe the blood off his face as her queen offered him a cup of water. Issei took a sip before looking over to the older devils and noticed how horrified they looked. And now that you know I'm pretty ill, you don't want me. Understandable. No. That's not it at all. It's just seeing it for myself is very different from just hearing about it. I still love you and never stopped loving you, Takumi. Grafia lovingly said as she reached in front of her to stroke Issei's hair. Takumi? That's the name you were born with. Takumi Lucifuge Gremory. You were born a month earlier than expected and had surziches nearly blow up the house due to panicking. On December 1st right at 5 a.m., you were born. Grafia explained to Issei before smirking at her husband as she mentioned his panicking. I remember that. He didn't want to leave your side at all, but we had to have a meeting, so all of the Satans met up at your place. Mom and Dad were out, so I had to bring Sona with me. She enjoyed feeling the baby kick. It was funny because you were calmer than he was, though. Did you see the looks on the other two Satans' faces? They were almost as bad as he was, and only because he was panicking. Serafal laughed as she recalled the event. Yes, if I recall correctly, every time Sona was around while I was pregnant, she seemed drawn to the unborn baby, despite only being a year old. At this point Tsubaki hopped into the conversation. Maybe that was a sign of how close they'd be. And what they'd mean to each other. I remember what Issei did the one time to that arrogant wrestler that trying to flirt with Sona, then grabbed her when she rejected him. You mean that time he cracked the wall by slamming a plastic knife into it? Then he threatened to cut off every inch of the guy's skin and dip him in lemon juice and salt. Afterwards he'd cut off the poor guy's manhood and force feed it to him while he was being lowered into a vat of acid, all while getting former prison inmates to gang rape the guy repeatedly. Yes, I remember that, Momo answered, making the older devils look to the boy as he sheepishly rubbed the back of his head. Sona is very precious to me, of course I'd destroy anyone that would try to harm her. That guy should be glad she pulled me off of him before I could carry out my threat. Issei said, which made Sona smile at his admission. That was because I didn't want you to have another attack, you'd already had two that day after all. Protecting you is worth it. Hey. You idiot, don't go saying stuff like that so casually. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot you were at Sunday, Issei responded to her, making the student council snicker while Sona blushed and tried not to smile. Barely even 16 and yet he's got several girls hanging around him all the time and an ice queen as his fiance. He takes after his old man, alright. Surziches laughed as he spoke. Huh? Issei asked, confused, making the adults realize he didn't know. You've beaten Sona in chess, right? Yeah, I've got 58 wins, she has 55, and we've had 96 or so ties. What does that have to do with her being my fiance? I was trying to find an easier and better way to tell you, but it seems someone let the cat out of the bag. Sona said before sighing and explaining the situation to him. Sorry you're stuck with a dying boy here, Sona. You deserve much better, Issei told her, not noticing Grafia and Surziches flinch at the mention that he's dying. Idiot. You're so damn clueless. Marriage agreement or not, do you honestly think I would care so much about you if I wasn't in love with you? Seriously, I've been trying to drop hints for the past year. Oh I guess I should ask you out on a date then? Issei asked with a sheepish grin on his face. The student council were all laughing at him, but he ignored them in favor of listening to Sona's answer. Though he rolled his eyes when Surziches pointed out that he was just as clueless as his mother was when he was trying to get her to go on a date with him. I'll go on a date with you, but it can't be school related, okay? Issei nodded his head at her demand and the two planned a movie date, agreeing to meet up at 6. Though they both blushed once they remembered they weren't alone. The adults had a good laugh, however, as all the girls on the student council in unison spoke in unison. Beeping finally. Shit, I didn't think this through very well, Issei mumbled to himself as he studied his closet in panic. Nothing from his wardrobe seemed good enough for his date with Sona. Bad, Issei called out, making both Surziches and his adoptive father Iseki jump up before freezing and wondering which one he was asking for. Would you both come help me find something to wear on my date with Sona? Nothing looks good enough to me. Iseki blinked at Issei's question. He blinked again. And again, before finally turning his head towards the kitchen where his wife Emiko was chatting with Grafia, calling out to her. "Hey sweetie." "Yes, my dear?" Emiko asked as the two women poked their heads into the living room where the men had been talking. "Did you know that Issei is finally going on a date with that nice girl Sona?" Deepening. Finally, Emiko responded with a smile, making Grafia laugh and Surzich's chuckle a bit before mentioning that the rest of the student council said the exact thing. "Oh please Mr. Gremory, everyone but those two could see it. I mean, he's been sweet on her since shortly after they first met. And any time she comes over to help him study, it's clear that she adores him." "Don't worry about that, Mrs. Haidu." Issei gets his oblivious nature from Grafia. "I spent the better part of 3 years trying to get her to notice that I was sweet on her," Surzicha said, nearly calling Issei Takumi. Immediately upon returning home, Issei introduced his adoptive parents to his real ones. They hit it off and were becoming good friends as they talked about the boy. Surzicha and Grafia introduced themselves both using the Gremory surname, even though as one of the 4 Satans he should have introduced himself as Surzicha's Lucifer. Though when his name came up, it was decided that since he had been addressed as Issei for years and that it would be weird to change now, he would take Takumi on as a middle name. As they talked about his name, Issei decided that he wanted to keep part of his birth name and part of his adopted name. So he came up with the idea of being named Issei Takumi Haidu Gremory, dropping the Lucifuge from his birth name, as having 3 last names was a mouthful. Grafia was alright with that, since unless he planned to resurrect the Lucifuge family he wouldn't need to be known as a Lucifuge. "Oh please just call me Emiko. I'm with my wife on this one, unless I'm at work I don't like being addressed as Mr. It makes me feel much older, so call me Issei. If that's the case then call me Surzichas please. Grafia and I owe you so much for adopting our son after he was kidnapped." At this point the men both turned back to Issei, who was in the middle of a mini panic attack as he still had an hour before the date but knew it was going to take 20 minutes to get there. "Okay then Issei, what you wear depends on 2 things. 1, what you two are doing for your date, and 2, how far do you want to go?" Issei said in an attempt to help calm the boy down. "We're going on a movie date. That new Pokemon movie just came out and I remember Sona talked about wanting to see it. After that I plan to take her out to diner, then make sure she gets home safely." Issei explained as he calmed down, though he was still breathing a little heavily, so Grafia moved over to put a hand on his back, secretly draining some of his ice magic and making the 2 powers inside him hide a little deeper as they were forced back from the surface. "Alright, and how far do you want to go? Do you want to start slow and just get to first base? Or do you want to see if you can get to second or even third base? Or do you think you can go all the way?" "Papa?" Issei groaned out, embarrassed. Surzichas and Issei both blinked for a moment before smiling. Issei was dad and he was papa. They could live with that. Thanks to the marriage contract that her parents agreed to, she is your fiance Issei. It would make sense for you to eventually go that far. Issei and Emiko both blinked at that statement. "Since when have they been engaged?" Emiko questioned, bewildered. Sona is from a very prominent family. As a matter of fact, from the moment her mother knew she was having a baby girl there were families coming to her and asking for her daughter's hand in marriage. Grafia and I were approached similarly when we found out we were having a son, though we turned them all down wanting our son to be free. But Sona's older sister Serafal is the only one in her family that's very protective of her, so they agreed to one. But when she found out about the marriage she declared she would only marry someone smarter than her and beat the fellow in chess, breaking the agreement. After that she made a contract with her parents that the first person who could win against her in chess would be her fiance. Apparently last year on the first day of school Issei managed to beat her. "Wait, you've been engaged for a year and haven't told us?" Issei questioned Issei, leading the boy to sigh. "I didn't find out until earlier today. Sona was having trouble finding a way to tell me. But one of her older sister's bodyguards came to check on her, so she asked a bodyguard to find Mama," Issei said, gesturing towards Grafia before continuing, "because she thought that Mama would be able to help with my illness. Neither of us were expecting Mama to be well to be Mama." Then Papa accidentally mentioned the marriage contract. Grafia and Emiko smiled as they listened, noticing the same thing Surzichas and Issei did earlier. Grafia was Mama and Emiko was Mom, just like Surzichas was Papa and Issei was Dad. "Crap, I've only got 20 minutes to get ready." Issei panicked after checking his watch. "Calm down, honey. Ignore your dads, let's go get you ready," Emiko said, leading him back to his room. Emiko sighed as she figured out what to do. She asked Grafia to do up Issei's hair while she found him an outfit. Surzichas and Issei just stood in the doorway watching the women while chatting. As he watched his wife deal with the boy's hair, Surzichas noticed just how similar it was to his mother's side of the family. "You definitely inherited the Bale family hair. Mother has a lighter version, but it seems you got the full brunt of it." "So my hair comes from my paternal grandmother?" "Yup. Her side of the family is nothing but brunettes. My red hair comes from my dad. Him, me, my little sister, and Milik is your younger brother all have the red hair from the Gremory line. Issei frowned once he finally realized why the Gremory name sounded familiar. Your little sister wouldn't happen to be named Riaz, would she? Yes. I take it you've met her at school. Wait, you mean that red-headed girl that pretended to be your friend, but once she found out you were adopted started spreading rumors around the school? Emiko asked as she frowned recalling the girl. If you're referring to the rumors that I'm an orphan and a perverted sexual deviant then yes. Most of the school believes those rumors. As it stands the Kendo Club, Student Council, Ria's friend Kaneko, and 2 teachers are the only ones that don't believe those rumors. I've actually been attacked by some of the other guys at school and the teachers ignored. She was raised better than that. I'll be having some words with her tomorrow, but for right now let's forget about her and finish getting you ready for your date, Serzich's nearly growled out after hearing what his oldest son had to put up with at school. Don't do anything, it'll just get worse if she thinks I went around her and told you. She tries anything else, and I'm making sure she gets outed as the family heiress. Grafia finally finished smoothing his hair out a bit so it wasn't as wild looking before letting him get up and get changed into the outfit Emiko had picked out. Issei quickly dressed himself in the black pants and dark yet dull blue button-up shirt with an emerald green vest. I've only got 5 minutes to spare, so I've got to go. Love you mom, mama, dad, papa. Issei said running out of the room after glancing at his clock. How can he already say he loves us? He barely knows us and we've missed so much of his life. Grafia questioned as she broke down, tears forming in her eyes. Serzich's wrapped an arm around his wife as Emiko explained to the two just how special those that become his friends or family are to Issei. She even pointed out how Ria's friend Kaneko, the girl he mentioned earlier that didn't believe the rumors being spread about him, was basically his little sister as she told the two about how they met. Emiko also told the two about how girls flocked to Issei and his talent as an artist and musical gift. Saying she was surprised after hearing that he was finally going to go on a date with Sona. I was already preparing to lock the two in the supply closet and keep them in there until they kissed. She would actually do it too. Somehow neither one of them noticed when everyone around them did. I've known Sona since she was a newborn. She was born the same year as my little sister Riaz after all. But Sona's older sister Serafal took to the role of big sister so quickly and emphatically. I remember one time her parents had been out on a business meeting when Serafal and I needed to have a meeting with 2 others. She brought Sona and her carrier straight into the room, set her down on the table in front of her, and almost shouted that her adorable baby sister Sona was going to be helping her at the meeting because, and I quote, she is the most adorable thing in the universe and I will flay them alive if anyone says otherwise. It was hilarious. Do you have any other stories you could share about Issei's fiance? I'd love to know more about her. Sure, but only if you share stories about Issei while we spy on their date. The 2 men chatted away as they walked out of the house to follow their son at a distance. Emiko and Grafia shook their heads at 2 and their antics, sharing a small smile at how like they were before following after the 2, realizing the need to keep them in check so that they couldn't ruin the date. Meanwhile with Sona. Damn. Everything looks too nice and fancy for a move date, Sona grumbled as she started panicking while sorting through her wardrobe in her room in the underworld. Serafal had teleported the 2 straight there so as to inform their parents about Sona's fiance. Big sis. Sona called out, admitting defeat and wanting help in picking an outfit. Serafal rushed to her aid as Sona completely ignored the fact her sister was infamous for her cosplaying and would likely try to get her into a magical girl costume. Sona explained her issue to her sister. Alright then, let's find you an outfit to woo your husband. Sis. We're not even married yet. Sona squeaked out, feeling embarrassed. Hush. He's just as protective of you as I am. I approve of him, and so you're married, but if he hurts you I'll freeze him. Serafal represented cheerfully, but Sona knew she was serious as she recalled an incident from a few years ago. The last time someone tried to harm Sona she was spending the day with her big sister. Sona didn't get a chance to react before the fool had been flash frozen and left in the garden as a warning. Serafal had also made a sign that read, "This is what will happen to anyone that dares to try and harm my sister." Signed Serafal Leviathan. Serafal's peerage had added a PS. On the end that stated this result was only if their king got to the person first. Sona sighed as her sister walked into her closet and studied her clothes. Serafal snapped her finger and called for her second bishop, a cane. She called for a cane because before becoming a devil she was a beautician and knew how best to style Sona's hair for a date. So how far do you want to go with him? Serafal asked her sister as she sorted through outfits. Big sister. Sona shouted in embarrassment once more. What? I need to know if I should go for sexy and smoldering or cute and cuddly. I want to look like me, not some prostitute. Sona responded somewhat sharply, wincing when Serafal instantly put a few outfits back. The cane remind me to burn whatever clothes she just put back sis, if you put me in a magical girl outfit, I will not let you hug me at all, no matter who is around for month. Sona stated, making Serafal turn around and put a few things back once more. After a moment Serafal settled on her choice and handed the clothes over to Sona, telling her to try them on. Sona did and was pleased with the look. A dark blue shirt with diagonal textured stripes of green, a solid green pleated skirt that reached down just past her knees and headband with a teal-colored flower. This looks perfect. Thanks big sis. You look so adorable Sona. Serafal cheered, lunging forward to wrap her sister in a hug. Oh, I almost forgot. I convinced Ajuka to make you some contacts that could contain your power just like your glasses do. Serafal said as she handed Sona a special case that held the contacts. Sona thanked her sister and asked her to thank Ajuka for her as she opened the container. Removing her glasses, Sona kept her right eye closed as her left eye returned to normal, a red bird appearing in the light purple iris. Sona slowly put in a contact over her eye and it shifted back to being violet, once again hiding one of her secrets and trump cards for dealing with possible enemies, her Issei. This was the reason, despite having the same training as her sister, Sona's water magic was not advanced enough to easily control ice as well. She spent more time learning to control and use her eye magic, inherited from her mother's side of the family. Blinking to adjust her eye, once Sona was satisfied that her Issei's power was contained, she looked away from Serafal and Akane as she opened her other eye to finish putting in the contacts. She turned away because she was unique in the fact that she has not just one type of eye magic, but two. Sona's right eye housed her Gorgon eye, which she struggled to control. She had better control over her Issei, but could use both of them at similar levels. Ajuka, being the scientist he is, claims she struggles with her Gorgon eye because its magic is much more potent in the fact that she is able to use it to freeze even ultimate class devils with ease. Hesitating to see if her Gorgon eye has been contained, Sona slowly turned around, pleasantly surprised to find that it was. Sona happily hugged her sister once more as thanks, though she wondered if she should reveal her eye magic to her own peerage, since Ajuka, Serafal's queen and bishops, and her parents were the only people that knew. Now you are ready for your date. Serafal cheered, only to be interrupted when they realized she was running late. No, I've got to hurry or he'll think I stood him up. Sona said, teleporting away in a rush. After a moment Serafal's queen Yukuro stepped into the room, sharing a look with Akane. We're watching over her date, aren't we? Of course. We've got to make sure it goes perfectly. Serafal responded as she masked their devilish presence. After all, Sona would be mad enough to turn her Gorgon eye on them. That thing was overpowered. Sona had stopped just outside of the movie theater to fix her hair as it had been tossed about in the wind as she ran to the theater from the location she had teleported to. When she entered the building though, she quickly spotted Issei being cornered by a few first-year students from the school. Thanks to being a devil, she had better hearing than a human and could listen in on what they were saying as she approached. You said you were waiting on someone, Issei. I don't see anyone with you. Were you stood up? I doubt that. Knowing her, she'll be here shortly. She was probably caught up talking with her older sister about this date. If she doesn't show, you could always come with us. I don't think we'd mind sharing. One spoke, getting nods from her friends. Sona's eyes flashed demonically for a second before she restrained herself. It wouldn't be good for her to attack someone just for making her jealous. Sorry if I made you wait, Issei. Speak of the devil and she shall appear. Anyway, no, not really, Sona. You look stunning. Issei responded to the girl, quickly making his way to her side, though they both had to hold back a chuckle at his statement. Oh, I made this for you, Issei said as he handed Sona a rose made of ice. Wait a second. You've been here waiting almost half an hour for her, Issei. Is that all you have to say, student council president? Besides, where are your glasses? It doesn't matter how long I waited. I'd wait as long as I needed to, so long as she looks great, which she does. Besides, she's obviously wearing contacts. At that, Issei tried to steer Sona away from the girls that were starting to harass her, hoping to get away without an issue. Sorry, Issei, big sis had gotten me some contacts for the date and I needed time to put them in properly. That's fine, I kinda figured something like that would happen. Issei was cut off when Sona was pushed from behind. She hit the floor with her knees, but one of her contacts had fallen out. Not noticing right away, Sona turned around to speak to the girls and they froze in place. Issei offered her a hand and helped her stand up. It wasn't until he was looking directly into her eyes and mentioned how beautiful they were that she realized what had happened and quickly shut them. Why did you close your eyes? They look beautiful no matter the color. Sona just meekly pointed behind him at the girls that were frozen. Wait, you can do that with your eyes? That's pretty cool. Though I don't think we can leave them like that. How about we manipulate their memories, then unfreeze them? They did exactly that and then started searching for her contact. You weren't affected by my eye. Was I supposed to be or something? Yeah, I don't have complete control over it yet. Anytime I look at someone they freeze as if turned to stone. I've had it happen to ultimate class devils too. I can reverse it but it's hard without complete control. At this point Issei stiffened as he heard a voice speaking in his head. The voice was none other than the dragon that slept within his sacred gear. Issei had known about Drake since he was young due to Aunt Griselda. He had mentioned it to Sona before, but no one else knew exactly which sacred gear Issei had. Hey partner. I just woke up after feeling a pretty powerful magic wash over us. I'm guessing some kind of petrification or freezing magic. It won't work on us though since before being sealed I was one of the 10 strongest beings in existence. So it won't affect me because it can't affect you? That's good to know. By the way, it was Sona that you felt. Apparently she has a Gorgon eye for eye magic. Yeah, I knew about that actually. I can tell you every ability and magic she has, but I won't because you would prefer to hear it from her. Speaking of, did you finally get it through your head that she liked you back? Oh shut up. Issei grumbled at the dragon before relaying to Sona what he just learned from Drake. She found her contact as he spoke and nodded at the explanation as she stood back up and went to the bathroom to put her contact back in. When she came back out Issei mentioned that he had gotten them some popcorn to share and a drink for each of them. After he handed Sona her drink the two went and claimed their seats. About halfway through the movie a song started to play that was really catchy. Sona led it over to tell Issei about it and the fact she was looking up the lyrics when she got home. You can sing. I might just sing for you one day if you're lucky, Sona said as she winked. After a few moments some guy behind them shouted out that the movie was bullshit. Issei told him if he didn't like it he could leave. They heard the man being confronted and pulled out of the theater before he could make a bigger ass of himself. But Sona noticed who it was that pulled the guy out. We're being spied on. More than one person actually. Both my birth parents and adoptive parents are here. That was Papa that took the guy out of the room. At that moment a really sad event just happened on screen that made someone in the very back start sobbing. That's big sis. She's probably got a few peerage members here too. Well, we can ignore them. Or we can prank them by making them think we are going further than we actually are and let their dirty minds do the rest. Option B, please. Here, put your arm over my should real casually with it. The two teenagers continued to watch the film, hiding the smirks at their stalkers' reactions to every little thing they did. Eventually the movie was over and Issei escorted Sona to a nice little restaurant. This place caters to the supernatural, so you don't have to hide it, Issei said to her as he held the door open for the girl. Once he walked in though he was tackled into a hug. Oh, what's this, you finally got a girlfriend to bring over here, Issei? The older woman that was hugging him said as she stepped back and noticed Sona. Hello. I'm Sona Citri. It's nice to meet you, dearie, I'm Annabelle. The lady introduced herself as a small girl with white hair walked over to the trio. The small girl was none other than Kaneko, the one member of Ria's peerage that Issei was friends with. Ice, you're on a date with Sona? Yup. Deepening, finally the girl replied, making Annabelle laugh as Issei and Sona facepalmed. On the far side of the restaurant a group of adults smiled and chuckled at the girl's words as well. Said adults were both sets of Issei's parents, thought the teen didn't notice. Ice is my big brother, so don't hurt him. If you do. Kaneko said before he fist lashed out against the wall, cracking it pretty badly. Annabelle called one of the other staff members over and using a bit of magic the wall was instantly repaired. After that she led Kaneko away to get some sweets. And I thought my sister was protective. Mind if I ask how you're so close with Kaneko though? I mean the rest of Ria's peerage hates you. I saw some guys trying to force her out on a date with them and kick their asses. Then I took her out for ice cream just to make sure she wasn't scared and traumatized. After that she started hanging around me a lot. You could almost say she became my shadow. We set up a room at my house for her to stay in anytime she needs to get away from Ria's. Mom and dad also adore her, unofficially adopting her to be my little sister. Well, that explains a lot actually. But where did you learn about this place? I didn't know there were places for the supernatural. Aunt Griselda brought me here once before she went away to train some younger exorcists. There are all kinds of places for the supernatural. Restaurants, stores, hell there are clubs too. That's good to know. Maybe next time we can check out some of those other places. Sure. Oh, I almost forgot. Issei said as he had felt something shift in his pocket. This is something else I made for you. I figured you wouldn't want something dramatic and grandiose, so I went somewhat casual. Issei spoke as he handed the box from his pocket to the girl across from him. Well, you know me. Unless it's too good to pass up, I hate unneeded dramatics. If it's too good to miss, then I'll add to it. Issei, this are you. Sona started as she opened the box only to be speechless as she saw what was inside. Inside the box was a ring. The ring was a black band with tendrils of icy blue wrapping and twisting up towards a rose that was just as black as the ring. Sitting in the center of the rose was a circle of small round blue gems that surrounded a larger heart-shaped green gem. Well, we are engaged, right? I made that ring to symbolize the engagement. The icy blue veins and the small round gems were all made courtesy of my ice magic. The green gem in the middle is a fragment from the gem on my boosted gear. Drake didn't mind giving me a fragment to use since he adores you, though it helps that it can be repaired after a while. But since it has some of my magic in it, the ring can act as a warning system. It can also create a barrier for you, and so long as you have it on your person I can use it to find you faster. Thanks to the fragment from Drake, which is a jade by the way, you also have an immunity to poisons, so long as you're wearing it. Thank you, Issei, and yes. 100 times yes, even without the contract I'd say yes. Sona said, slipping the ring onto her finger as a few tears started to fall. Before Issei could say anything, she yanked him by his shirt across the table and kissed him. They drifted off into their own world as they kissed, unaware of the wolf whistles and cheering from not just their spies, but everyone else in the restaurant. Though one of the adults that had been following the two had the thought to take a picture. When they finally broke apart, they both panted for breath. You know, you could start using my nickname. We are engaged properly now. I thought only your family was allowed to call you Ice. Family would include my bride-to-be, which is you, so. Alright, smart ass. You know I really do love you. I love you too. Hey Issei, I heard you finally went on a date with Sona. One of Issei's friends and classmates called out to him as he walked through the school gate. Yeah, though I got there early. Speaking of, there were a few first-year girls trying to flirt with me while was waiting. Oh, I see our work finally paid off. What do you mean? Well, Murayama, a few other girls from the kendo club, and I finally got tired of all the rumors about you that were going around the school. We may or may not have countered them by saying whoever started the rumors was just pissed off at you for turning them down due to your crush on Sona. The task, you didn't have to do that, though it seems to have worked since there are a few girls glaring at you right now. They probably think you are trying to flirt with me. Oh, if I could be so lucky, but I know you've only got eyes for the student council president. I'm skipped to lunch. Greg, remind me to tell Katas and Murayama their plan worked a lot better than expected. Well, that's more of my fault. Since you are my host, you have the same charisma as a dragon and draw people to you. Issei groaned as an answer to the dragon, before noticing the large following he had. After counting to 20 and not being anywhere close to the correct number, he gave up on trying to find out just how many girls were following him and braced himself to answer their questions. Luckily, a friend intervened, drawing their attention momentarily. That friend was Kaneko, and she grabbed his hand, drawing surprised gasps from the girls that were watching. Hurry up, big bro, big sister is waiting for you. Kaneko spoke, getting the girls watching to relax again, now that they knew she wasn't a rival for his affection. You're calling Sona big sister now? Just last night you threatened to flatten her. You proposed to her after that. Behind them the crowd of girls screamed what? In confusion. Most of them had gone wide-eyed and stopped walking mid-step. What's with the noise? Sona asked as she burst out of the student council's office. Well, big sister, they just learned that Ice is not available anymore. Sona did a double take at Kaneko's words, confused for a moment before she saw the sobbing girls in the hallway. President Sona, do you know who Issei proposed to? Please tell me it's not some big-chested girl that's impossible to contend with. I don't know about impossible, Sona muttered, clearly seeming self-conscious. Don't worry Sona, no one can take me from you. Big brother proposed to you. He's loyal and won't betray you. Unless you betray him first, you have nothing to worry about, Kaneko bluntly stated, making the sobbing girls freeze once more before noticing the ring on Sona's hand. Little sis is right, you know. You want to eat with us, Kaneko. Riaz is mad right now thanks to some news earlier. It's best to stay away for now. I want to see the ring too. Kaneko nodded as she spoke, her eyes glancing toward Sona's hand. Sona adjusted her hand so Kaneko could see the ring better. Ice, you have good taste in jewelry. Come on you two, let's go eat lunch. Issei spoke, leading the two past the student council office. After a moment, the girls that had been following Issei finally unfroze. For a moment they could do nothing but fall to their knees and blink rapidly. Issei is engaged to student council president Sona. They wailed. The trio ignored the crying girls and made their way up to the roof, intent on enjoying the weather. Good afternoon, my son, Grafia spoke as she stepped out of the magic circle, scaring the crap out of the three teens before giving Issei a hug. Hi mama, Issei hugged her back before she turned to look at Kaneko. My oldest son treats you as a little sister and you are a member of my sister-in-law's peerage. Feel free to call me your mother or however you want to say it. She then hugged the cat-like girl. Moving her attention to Sona, she spoke again. I approve of you and your engagement with my oldest son. You can also call me your mother or however you prefer to say it. You probably didn't come here just to tell us this, mama. Kaneko spoke, though she paused as she decided which way she wanted to call the woman mother. She finished speaking with a smile on her face, happy to have a motherly figure as she was far too young when her true mother died to have any memories. That's true, my daughter. I came to get Issei and take him to Ajuka. We're hoping he can find out why and how Issei has a sacred gear, along with find a possible way to help with his illness. Not to mention he is a high-class devil. That means he needs to get his evil pieces. Ajuka. He's one of the 4 Satans alongside my big sister and your dad. Since he's a genius, Ajuka is head of the technology department. Sona offered to the confused Issei. We only have half an hour, mama. That's plenty of time for a checkup and to get you registered. Your evil pieces won't be ready until later this afternoon though. I will take us straight there, however, as Ajuka is easily distracted by his work, so it's better for us to make him notice us quickly. You two can come along if you want. Sona and Kaneko nodded at Graphia's offer, after which she made a magic circle underneath all 4 of them. Ajuka, sir, are you here? The older woman called out, addressing him as sir, since she was still technically on duty as a maid. As requested, I'm here, Graphia. Now can I ask why you interesting? These massive powers of conflicting origins. I can see why brought him for evil pieces and a checkup. Come on in. Ajuka may seem a bit scary and serious, but he's very kind. He likes to create things more than do his job as a Satan, but he is more serious about it, that big sis is. He's an older brother as well. Given how rare it is for most devils to have siblings, you'll find that he, like all the other older siblings, are fiercely protective of younger devils. That makes sense. After all, the oldest sibling is there to help and protect the younger siblings. I just can't wait until Friday when we can bring you to the Gremory household and you can finally meet Milikas. Just don't be like your father or Serafal. Those two are hardcore sis-cons. Wait, this is like Takumi, you finally found him. Graphia explained how she and Serziches had finally found their oldest son thanks to Sona. She also mentioned his situation. Ajuka may be your dad's rival, but they're best friends. If you want to harm one, you have to go through the other. True, but don't forget we protect you too, Sona. I mean, we've known you since you were a month old. But on to why we are here. This won't hurt Takumi, but I do need you to stand still for a moment. He's gone by Issei for most of his life now, Ajuka, sir. But he decided to make Takumi his middle name. Graphia, we've been friends for ages, please stop calling me sir when you aren't on duty. Noting the confusing on Issei's face, she explained how after he was kidnapped she needed something to do, so she became the head maid for the Gremory household. Issei nodded, knowing what it was like to need something to do. Well then, while we wait for the scan results, let's get started on your evil pieces. Sound good, nephew? The 4 Satans are really close. They're basically their own family. Which would make him your dad's brother. That's why he's calling you nephew. Sona whispered in Issei's ear so that he wouldn't be confused. Sounds good to me then, uncle. Issei responded to Ajuka, causing the older man to smile. Just answer with what comes to mind first. What is your element? Dragonfire and ice. Favorite colors? Violet and gold, Issei responded after glancing at Sona as she snuggled into his side and rested his head on her shoulder. Sona caught on to the fact his favorite colors were the same as her eyes and doubted it was a coincidence. Ajuka smiled at the young couple as Sona blushed after hearing Issei's favorite colors. He decided that he was going to tell his fellow Satans about that later. They'd probably tease the girl until she threatened to use her eyes on them. Though Ajuka and Serziches might be safe, as there was a possibility they were too strong for her magic to work on them. What is your symbol? A rose, but the petals are scales. At this point Sona shifted a hand to Issei's head and started running it through his hair. This act had Issei relaxing and lulled him nearly to sleep. He was feeling that comfortable cuddling with the girl he loves, her fingers combing through his hair. It helped that he was already tired due to having an attack earlier. How would you see your peerage? As family, like my own siblings. They'd be people to protect and admired. Sona, Kaneko, and Graphia all smiled. Ajuka had a grin as well. Issei was just like his father. Okay, we're at the last 2 questions. What would you do for those that are precious to you? I'd do anything for them. And the last question. What do you think of Serafal Leviathan? Ajuka asked. He had a grin because this last question was meant as a trick to mess with people as a joke. The majority of the responses he normally received were praise and awe or lustful thoughts. The latter of the 2 normal answers typically caused Ajuka to flare his power just a bit since he was looking out for his friend. Issei's response, however, made everyone in the room crack up. Serafal would pout forever after hearing his thoughts. Serafal. Pardon my language here, but I think she's batshit crazy. Sona had let Issei sleep through the school day once they got back. By that point the girls that had followed him earlier and learned of his engagement to Sona had started to spread the word. Mitsuda and Motohama came for him, wanting to hang out and secretly grill him for info. So he left the school to hang out with his friends, answering some of their questions and lightly hitting them for their more perverted ones. It wasn't long till they had made their way to a nearby park to sit, chat, and enjoy the weather, even as the day started winding down. Shortly after they sat down, however, Issei felt like an attack had hit him, only this time it felt much worse. As his vision started going hazy, all he could see was a fallen angel attacking his friends. Man, this is a good day. I get to kill 2 sacred gear holders and the brat that turned me down the other day. The fallen angel girl said with delight evident in her voice as she smiled at her actions. Once she felt certain the trio were going to die from the injuries she inflicted on them, she flew off. At this point Mitsuda was already unconscious. Issei and Motohama were in pain, groaning, though Motohama was able to overcome the pain to speak. I don't want to die here. Then become my servant and live for me. A voice sounded from Motohama's pocket, though it echoed from Mitsuda's pocket as well. Each of the boys' pockets started glowing as a magic circle appeared nearby. Stepping out from the circle was Ria's Gremory. She revived the 2 boys and after checking to make sure they weren't going to die within the next minute, turned to Issei. I have no interest in you, besides think of this as a punishment. I don't know how you did it, but I had my ass chewed out by my older brother over how I've treated you. As she spoke, Ria stepped onto Issei's back, trying to cause him more pain. Once he cried out in agony, she was satisfied and left with his friends to make sure they properly heal. Damn it, Mama, Papa, Kaneko, Sona. I'm sorry. Issei weakly called out for his devilish loved ones. As Issei slowly faded out of consciousness, his thoughts drifted. Mama, Papa. You just got me back in your lives, but it doesn't seem like I'll be staying. I'm sorry I won't get to meet my little brother. Kaneko, it looks like I can't keep being your older brother, I'm sorry. Sona, I'm glad I got to tell you I love you. Cut to Sona. Sona was sitting in the student council office, working on some paperwork when she reeled back as if struck. She collapsed against the table in front of her, clutching her hands over her heart as tears formed in her eyes. Sona. Are you okay? Her queen Tsubaki asked, rushing to her side. Sona could say nothing though as she fought to figure out what was wrong. A short distance away the girls heard a strange cry, one that sounded like a cat calling out. While here Peerage started wondering about the sound, Sona's eyes widened in fear as she heard Issei's voice in her head. But he sounded weak and extremely frail. Sona's emotions caused her power to burst forth around her as she went into denial. Sona, I'm glad I got to tell you I love you. No. This can't be happening. I'm coming, Issei. She cried out as her magic teleported her way, though she didn't notice. Nor did she notice that she had managed it without a magic circle or a contract, as her attention was drawn to Issei. Cut to Kaneko. Kaneko was walking through the school, looking for a good place to hang out and be free of her king for a while. But she felt as if something was off. It wasn't until she heard the whisper in her head that she could pinpoint what was wrong. Damn it, Mama, Papa, Sona, Kaneko. I'm sorry. No. Please, don't leave me, big brother. Kaneko cried, not noticing that her Nekomata features were being shown to the world as she frantically started running with a hope she could find Issei before it was too late. Especially after hearing Kaneko, it looks like I can't keep being your older brother, I'm sorry. Cut to Grafia and Surzich's. After she was off duty for the day, Grafia along with her husband and youngest child went to visit with Ajuka. Of course their main reason was to get Issei's evil pieces. Both she and Surzich's were smiling proudly when Ajuka handed them over. Issei was powerful enough and lucky enough to have the full set as mutated pieces. But she stumbled as she reached for the box that held them. If it weren't for little Milica's catching the box, they would have spilled out all over the floor. But she didn't notice as she clutched her chest in pain. Grafia, what's wrong? Surzich's asked, wrapping an arm around his wife. I don't know, I just felt like a light spear had hit him. Grafia trailed off, her eyes going wide like Surzich's and little Milica's as they heard. Damn it, Mama, Papa, Sona, Kaneko. I'm sorry. Tears poured out of Grafia's eyes as she begged whoever would listen not to take her oldest. Mama, Papa. You just got me back in your lives, but it doesn't seem like I'll be staying. I'm sorry I won't get to meet my little brother. Not when we just got him back. Please, no, Surzich's asked, sounding slightly broken. Milica's on the other hand was curious as to who the voice was, wondering if it was his older brother they had told him about. He also wanted to know why they sounded like they were in pain. Ajuka, not having heard the voice, knew something was wrong. We have to find Issei quickly. I left a contract on his hand just in case. Give me his king piece quickly. Milica's did just as Ajuka asked and the man was gone in a flash. Back to Issei. Issei was unconscious, just lying there on the ground nearly dead when Sona got to him, which was roughly the same time as Kaneko stumbled upon him. The two tried everything they could think of, even using the 2 mutated rooks that Sona's sister had given her. But all they did was glow dully. Issei, please, we just got together, don't leave me now. Sona screamed at the boy's body, tears falling rapidly. Kaneko crying as well, as she pleaded with her brotherly figure not to die. They only vaguely noticed the magic circle appear as Ajuka stepped out of it. Kneeling down, he placed Issei's king piece with Sona's rooks right over the boy's heart. Together the three pieces started shining before they sank into his chest. Sona shakily started the chant to revive a person, as Ajuka made a note of the fact that it took 3 mutated pieces, one of which was a king no less, to revive his friend's son. Once she was done with the incantation, Sona lowered her head to Issei's chest and let out a relieved breath upon hearing his heartbeat once more. Satisfied that he wasn't dead, she leaned up and placed a kiss on his forehead while Kaneko lightly hugged the boy's body. "Let's get him back somewhere safe and comfortable so you can use skin healing on him." "I'll go let Grafe," Ajuka started to say before a wave of power knocked him back, though he noted Sona and Kaneko weren't affected. But he didn't mind because he knew that the power was Issei's just from the icy hot feeling it caused. As he looked at the boy, Ajuka watched in fascination. Issei's hair and spots started to lighten up as streaks of silver began showing through. Due to his keen eye, Ajuka also noticed that Issei's skin darkened up, only enough to be noticeable if someone was looking for changes, and even then they'd have to have a very keen eye. He also noted that Issei's body grew a couple inches and his muscles became more defined and toned. His ice and dragonfire started swirling around him as they combined and made steam for a moment, but Ajuka didn't care about that. He was happy to see that Issei's powers were finally balanced, as the left half of his body was covered in red dragon scales, while the right half was coated in a fine layer of ice. Issei's body shifted for a moment before 2 sets of wings grew out of his back. One demonic set that was slightly larger than your average devil's wings. The other set was draconic in appearance, though they were in rough shape. Ajuka guessed that was part of the dragon in Issei's sacred gear trying to manifest. Right as Ajuka finished the thought, Issei's wings retracted and his body went back to normal. That certainly was interesting. "Ajuka, you have a talent for understating things." "Why, thank you. Anyway, I'll go let Grafe and Serziches know while you go use the skin method." Sona nodded to the older devil as she cradled her fiance against her chest before disappearing in a flash of water. "I don't think she even realizes what she just did. I swear every time I see her she gets stronger and stronger." Ajuka mumbled to himself, slightly shocked at the fact Sona just teleported away without a magic circle or contract. Chuckling to himself as he used his own magic circle, Ajuka was glad to see that things were looking up for his family. Kaneko sighed as she was left alone, but not wanting to be left behind took off at a sprint for Issei's home. The next morning. Sunlight streamed through the window, landing directly on Issei's face, causing him to awaken, only to snap complete awake once he felt the undoubtedly female body pressing against his own. "Sona. Morning, Ice." Sona responded as she sleepily rubbed her gorgon eye while smiling at the boy. "Good morning to you too. But why are we both naked in my bed? I'm fairly certain I died." Sona gave the boy a glare at the reminder, lightly slapping his cheek. "That's for nearly dying on me. You scared me half to death when I felt you get stabbed. I almost broke down completely when I heard your thoughts. Honestly, I thought I'd lost you. Sorry about that. I didn't expect to be attacked so openly like that. I didn't mean to scare you." "I know, but you are real lucky your evil pieces were finished. Oh, and that Ajuka was smart enough to put a contract on your hand just in case. If he hadn't shown up," Sona responded, tears welling in her eyes again. Issei wiped the tears away with his thumbs before pulling the girl close and pressing his lips to her hair. They both knew he didn't mean to worry her like that. "Just don't ever do that to me again, please. Don't die on me. I don't care what I have to do if it'll keep you from doing that again. Even if it means we get married right here, right now. Or if you want to have a child and get me pregnant." Sona blushed as she spoke, but she was being honest with Issei. Issei just held the girl close as she spoke, listening to her pleas and promising he would stay by her side as long as she wanted him to. Neither one caring about anything else in the world at that time. "Oh, before I forget, now that you're a full devil your illness should be gone," Sona said after she realized she was rambling. Before Issei could respond, his bedroom door opened to reveal his adoptive mother Emiko, who promptly turned around calling out to her husband. "Here, Issei's in bed naked with his fiance. That's my boy. It seems like we'll have grandkids in no time." "Grandkids?" she squawked out, her face showing the teens. She was torn between terror and happiness at the thought. Issei and Sona were blushing at the exchange, though if asked they would say there was no place else they'd rather be. Eventually things settled down, and Sona went home to get a change of clothes before lounging about with her fiance. Issei took that time to go get a shower and clean up, but stumbled after seeing himself in the mirror. He first noticed the change to his hair, which after admiring for a moment he decided he liked. But then he noticed something that really threw him off. His eyes had changed colors too. Before they were a warm chocolatey brown, but now they had the elongated vertical slit of a pupil that was common in lizards. That wasn't what shocked him, however. The thing that did it was that his eyes were now the same shade of violet as Sona's, but upon looking closer he had golden flecks scattered throughout the violet. While he was in the shower, Issei chatted with Drake, who for some reason he felt a stronger connection to now. Drake explained that the eyes changing was more from his influence, but he told Issei if he focused he could make them turn back, but Issei decided to keep the color and hide the lizard-like pupil while around humans. Time skip. Issei was excused from school for the rest of the week after that. Sona and the student council had his attendance labeled as excused due to recovering from a stabbing. The week after was spring break, and the two engaged teens spent as much of it together as possible, mostly lounging about and playing chess or cuddling. Issei had spent a bit of time with Ajuka, who gave him the results of his previous checkup, before saying that everything had changed for the better now that he was a devil. Even having the older devil point out that since his powers had stabilized and weren't fighting, he should feel a stronger connection with the sacred gear. But he wasn't at top form yet, as his body had to fully recover from the 16 years of strain on it from before he became a devil once more. Ajuka also explained that even though it took Sona's rooks on top of Issei's king piece, it was because the king piece was the last one added that he technically is not a part of her peerage. He simplified it by saying peerages are basically master-servant relationships, but because of how things worked out their situation is more of a partnership. As such, he could deny appearing as part of her peerage during a raiding game if he chose, but Issei ignored that as he knew he'd always be there to help her. He also spent quite a bit of time in the underworld finally getting to meet his younger brother. Grafia had taken quite a few photos of the two playing around and getting to know each other. Issei did his best to spoil Milikas without going overboard and enjoyed his time with the boy. Due to that, no one from school outside of Sona's peerage had seen the boy. Thus his friends were relieved to see him walk through the school gates holding hands and smiling with Sona. Mitsuda and Motohama were both very happy to see their friend was okay and teased him about the new look. Speaking of the two, Issei did mention to Sona how Rias had appeared and revived them before leaving him to die. Needless to say, Sona was pissed for that and quickly informed her sister and Surziches, the two also becoming enraged at Ria's actions. But Issei had managed to get them to hold off on punishing the girl, as he knew after meeting his paternal grandparents, she'd be in even deeper water and it would be better to get all the punishments done at the same time. That was set up for later on in the week after his grandfather, the current head of the house, returned to the underworld from his business trip. Back to his two friends and their greetings, Issei was interested in hearing about their new abilities. Hey, did you see that power testing thing going around online? The one that told you how many chess pieces you're worth and what kind of powers you should have in that devil game that just came out. Apparently I'm a king piece and I should have both ice magic and dragonfire. It took the two a minute to catch on before they realized he was giving them a safe way to talk about their devil powers in public. Nice man. I only got 4 pawns, though I think the absorption ability I should have sounds pretty cool. I got 4 pawns too. It's kinda funny how my ability is the opposite of yours though, Motohama. I should have a reflecting ability apparently. Sona was mildly impressed with the two, though after hearing their abilities, she was able to realize why Rias and her peerage thought that Issei's power was coming from the two perverts instead. That's pretty interesting. Like ice, I got a king piece. But I've got water magic and some eye abilities. Mitsuda and Motohama both looked at her surprised for a moment before they lunged for Issei, attempting to pull him into a hug as they teased the boy. They were blocked by Sona, though she apologized after realizing their intent. Should I expect you to be even more overprotective for a bit? Not just me, but yes. That's true I guess, but they aren't the ones that said they'd do anything as long as I didn't get myself killed. Just because it's true doesn't mean you have to embarrass me by telling everyone. At this point Issei noticed Kaneko walking up and waved her over. Kaneko walked over with a wink towards Issei, letting him know she was in a playful mood. She could sense that the two still hadn't done anything, but she couldn't resist the joke. Issei and Sona both went bright red as the students around them were stunned, jaws hitting the ground. The student council couldn't help but laugh, falling to the floor in their giggling fits or leaning on each other for support. Kaneko was having trouble holding the laughter in, though only people with really sharp eyes would notice her shaking in silent laughter. Placing one hand gently on Sona's tummy, she innocently looked up and asked the older girl, "Does it have to do with mom and dad shouting about possibly having grandkids soon?" After a moment her head tilted as she looked at Issei. "Am I gonna be an auntie?" The school week had gone by quickly, though Issei and Sona played hell trying to convince the students that Kaneko was just playing a prank on everyone. Other than that, not much else had happened. Though Issei did warn his two perverted buddies about the coming storm for their peerage king. Now on a Saturday with everyone gathered, it was time to speak with Lord Gremory and his wife about Ria's actions. And to reveal the fact that their lost grandson had been returned. Everyone but Surziches was in the study as he had to answer a message from the other 3 Satans, but no one spoke a word. The head of the family, Lord Zeoticus Gremory, was sitting at his desk. Venelana Gremory, his wife, was standing at his side. Sitting in one of his guest chairs was Riaz, who looked confused as to what was going on. Her peerage was standing in a line behind her, though Kaneko was standing as close as she could to Sona without being noticed and reprimanded. In the other guest chair was Sona, her queen Tsubaki, standing on her right. Standing slightly behind her and less formally than Ria's peerage was the rest of Sona's peerage. Off on the left side of the room looking out the window was Serafal, with only her queen Mukuro and knight Pico accompanying her. Standing against the same wall as the door was Grafia, with Milikas standing in front of her, and on her left with a cloak disguising him for now was Issei. Serziches finally walked into the room. He strolled straight up to his father's desk and looked dead into his eyes. "Father, enough is enough. We need to stop spoiling Riaz." Riaz jumped at his words, but wisely held her tongue, not wanting to speak up without knowing what she had to defend against. But she is the heiress. She not only nearly cost us our alliance with the Citri clan, but she left her own kin to die. Those that weren't in the know had been shocked by the last part of his statement. Though Riaz was more curious about how she almost cost them their friendship with Sona's family. "Explain please." Venelana spoke up, a harsh edge on her voice. While she knew Riaz was too spoiled, she needed context to her son's statement, not wanting to falsely punish her daughter. "Because of her actions my eldest son almost died." "You mean you finally found Takumi?" "Yes. According to what Ajuka had found in his exam, the devil that kidnapped Takumi from his cradle had somehow managed to manipulate his genetics so that his demonic powers would stay dormant. But he had received a sacred gear that awoke his magic. Takumi had been adopted by a family living in Kuo, but Ria's actions and almost killed him." At this point Riaz couldn't keep quiet. "Who is Takumi?" Zeoticus answered her question by explaining Takumi is Ria's oldest nephew, but when she was a year old and Takumi only a few months old he was kidnapped. "Okay, but I've never met a Takumi. So how did I nearly end our alliance with Sona's family and almost get him killed? When he was adopted by a human couple they gave him a new name, that's why you don't know that you know him. We only found him because Sona noticed a resemblance between him and Grafia and had asked for her help in teaching him to control his ice magic, since it was fighting with his sacred gear for being his dominant power, which caused his body to tear itself apart." "I see. But that still doesn't answer my question. Besides, I don't recall letting anyone I know die." Behind her Mitsuda and Motohama grumbled, wondering if she remembered how she revived them and left Issei bleeding out. Most of Sona's peerage snorted at that while Riaz whirled around in her seat to glare at them. "Who is this Issei you mentioned?" "Issei has been our friend since grade school. There's something wrong with his body and it basically causes his body to tear itself apart, so he's pretty sickly. Because of that the doctors estimated him to die before turning 18. But don't let that fool you. He's fiercely protective of his friends and family. Hell, he's taken a knife for me one time when someone tried to mug us while walking home and got shot pushing Mitsuda out of the way when a burglar broke in during one of our sleepovers. Since he's dying he cares more about keeping everyone else safe, even if it means he'll die faster. And he'll do it with a smile on his face, not caring if he gets a word of thanks. He sounds like a fantastic person. I'd love to meet him. Ask Sona about that, she revived him." Riaz responded to her mother's praise of the pervert's friend. Said friend that was secretly hiding his identity from Riaz until Serziches decided to reveal him. "And that there is the rub, Riaz. By their admission you left their friend to die. You want to know how you nearly killed your nephew? His human parents named him Issei." Serziches spoke, not even looking at his sister. His words caused their mother to frown at her daughter. Lord Gremory also glared at her before turning his attention to Serziches. "But how did she almost ruin our connection with the Citri clan? Issei is my close friend and fiance. Riaz knows both of these, yet she left him to die. It's true that I revived him, but what if I hadn't gotten there in time or my pieces weren't enough?" Sona said, standing up and moving to Issei's side, pulling the cloak away to reveal him to the group. Luckily Tsubaki knew what her king was doing and had a camera ready to get pictures of Ria's reaction now that Issei had been revealed. Serziches stepped back as well and placed a hand on each of his son's shoulders as Grafia stood next to him behind their children. Then Alana was the first of the Gremorys to recover and demanded to know why her daughter seemed to hate her nephew. The first person to speak up, however, was Kiba. "That cowardly bastard had the gale to pretend it was an accident after groping her. Were you there at the time, Kiba?" "'Cause I was, and let me tell you, insulting my friend like that without proof has lowered my opinion of you considerably." Issei had just recovered from a coughing fit when he misstepped on the stairs and fell over Riaz. Besides, you could hardly call it a grope when his hands were on the ground to catch himself. He broke his right wrist with that fall and twisted the left. Mitsuda's explanation of the injuries had Grafia immediately checking Issei's wrists to see if they properly healed. Sona however shook her head in exasperation as Issei tried to tell his mother they had already healed correctly. I did notice it took you half the time it should have to heal. I don't know how I didn't take it as another hint you weren't fully human. You were busy trying to prevent my death or get my permission to resurrect me if I did die. Don't remind me. It took my 2 mutated rooks and your mutated king piece to bring you back. At that everyone the only people not shocked were the 2 teens, Surziches and Grafia. Sona was there so she already knew and Ajuka had told Issei during his checkup afterwards with Surziches and Grafia accompanying him at that point. But the Devil King Devola theorized that people powerful enough to require more than 2 mutated pieces were unable to be revived after conducting several experiments. Ziotica spoke up as he shook off his surprise. Pardon my language, but beat Devola. If it weren't for Sona and Uncle Ajuka I would not be here. Even though he had warned them beforehand Sona still slapped his chest for cursing. Surziches chuckled at the two as he warned Issei to get used to it. But if Issei was born as a devil, how did he get a sacred gear? Kaneko questioned as she recalled the explanation for Issei's sickness. Surziches and Serafal shared a look before the crimson-haired devil responded. The system that controls the sacred gears is broken, I guess would be right the word. Things like this happen more often than you think. Or it could be that whatever genetic change the stray devil that kidnapped him did masked his demonic presence enough for him to obtain his sacred gear. Sona's Queen Tsubaki did step forward and say the first option is possible as she was born as a devil with a sacred gear too. After that Grafia looked down at Milika since Kaneko speaking had reminded her. I almost forgot. Issei has adopted Kaneko as his little sister, Milika's. That means if you want she could be your big sister. The boy eagerly nodded as he raced towards the catgirl and pulled her over to stand beside him and Issei. After a moment he grasped her hand and proudly called her his big sister. Kaneko pulled the boy into a hug, Issei ruffled Milika's hair, Surziches and Grafia just watched the three with a smile. And now to bring us back on topic. What are you going to do about Ria's punishment? Even though she didn't know it, she left her own nephew to die. She almost broke ties with the Citri clan, and according to the reports Pico has given me from the time she checks in on Sona, Rias has been spreading vicious lies and rumors to manipulate the school. Serafal spoke for the first time since the meeting began. Lord Gremory closed his eyes and thought over the subject, but his wife was having none of that. She pulled him up and out of his seat by his ear and out the door to have a private discussion about what to do for a punishment. Having been on the receiving end of ear pulls from their loved ones before both Surziches and Issei winced in sympathy for the man. Though as they walked out Surziches told them Issei's decision about his name. Rias and her peerage minus Kaneko were quiet and sullen as they thought about all the possibilities for her punishment. Sona's peerage moved over to chat with Issei and Sona to pass the time. Serafal and her 2 peerage members just glared at Rias. After a moment Kaneko and Milika started playing patty cake to entertain themselves, causing Grafia to smile at the two. With Lord Gremory and his wife. This is very serious honey. She needs to know that none of her actions were acceptable. That is true, but it's hard to come up with something sufficient. The few ideas that came to mind before you pulled me away were too light or too heavy-handed. What do you mean? Well, on the heavy-handed side, I was thinking to restrict her from the human world, but then that invites the arguments over her arranged marriage, and despite how angry Surziches is at her, I know he does not want her to marry Riser because of his arrogance. That's true, and not your fault. Riser was a good boy, but his power went to his head after the agreement was made, but what of your lighter punishment ideas? I thought about taking Kuo away from her and having the council make it Issei's territory, but then I remembered it's not really hers, since the council was only going to give it to Sona initially. I also thought about having her trade Issei little Kaneko's rook piece, since the two have bonded so well. Anything else? Remove her as heiress and name either Issei or Milika's as heir, but yet again this seems too light of a punishment. What about combining some of your ideas? Taking Kuo away doesn't seem like much, but what if you did that in conjunction with trading Kaneko to Issei, and instead of restricting her from the human world, have her actions monitored to prevent her from repeating these actions? What would I do without you, my dear? That's a brilliant idea. Ziotica said as he kissed his wife on the cheek. She chuckled at his words, but had no witty thing to say in response. Their discussion now over, the two returned to the study. We have decided how to handle Ria's punishment. First, I will be going to the council and having them remove Rias as joint controller of the territory that is Kuo. Sona will be the sole devil in charge. Second, Rias will trade Kaneko's rook piece to Issei because of how well they get along. Finally, Rias is to be monitored at all times while within the human world to prevent her from being able to repeat these actions. Lord Gremory spoke. Rias looked outraged at his words, but couldn't say anything as Surziches spoke up. Unless Kaneko is willing to be traded, I would not agree to your second punishment for her. But that said, every head in the room turned towards the white-haired girl. She bowed her head in thought over the situation. Since she'll be monitored, will she still be asked to deal with stray devils? Sure, Kaneko would love to spend more time with Issei and not have to worry about Ria's mood. But she wouldn't be able to live with herself if they got hurt because she wasn't there to help. As if sensing her train of thought, Lord Grimmery shook his head no at her question, saying that the council was already discussing the dangers of small peerages being asked to take care of strays. Breathing out in relief, Kaneko nodded at his question before declaring she would agree to be traded. Deciding to get the trade out of the way, Issei recalled how Ajuka had shown him to use his magic to summon or create the evil pieces. He went through the process, making a mutated rook piece appear in his hand. Rias did the same, sharing the idea of getting it over with quickly. Now then, since Rias hasn't gone through a trade yet, she doesn't know this either. It's a good learning experience for both of you. Place the piece being traded in the center of the magic circle I'm about to draw, then stand just off to the side. The two did as asked, paying close attention to the older devil's explanation. Now slowly start letting your aura flare and extend your hand towards the center. The chant I'm about to teach you to disrupt and change the link between the pieces and their current king so that they are now linked to you. Now repeat after me. Xiaotica spoke, guiding the two through the trade. Once the trade was finished, Rias decided she was tired and retired to her room with her peerage in tow. Seraphil was satisfied with how things turned out, so she left with her two peerage members. Sona's peerage excused themselves so as to give Issei the chance to properly meet his grandparents, though he wrapped his hand around Sona's, so she had to stay with him, but she didn't mind. End of the here. So that's it for today's video, guys. Before you go, just like the video and share it with your friends. Bye.